what drew you to expand upon Clark's short story Breaking Strain for this series?
I have a hard hearing. So
it's okay. What drew you to expand upon Clark's short story Breaking Strain for the series?
Okay, well, for this series, it's because it's the first of the 6 volumes that were written with Arthur back in the 1980s and 1990s. So we're trying to keep with that number, because what happens in those each one of the 6 novels that Arthur and I wrote were quite different from what Arthur had written as a series of short stories, and very different. And some of them are in 1930s, 40s, and some of them are in the 1990s, and so there's quite a bit of difference in terms of his stories, but by the time that we have finished with a number of characters that were invented by me and with his help, we were able to, and some of those stories are novels that were not only done by him, stories that were done by him, but were redone completely by me with his looking at it and saying this is going to work, or you got to change that bit or whatever. So that's how we got started.
So with the series, how closely is it going to follow the books?
So far as I know, I've only seen the first 2 volumes. They may have written more, but they didn't tell me.
They didn't tell you, huh?
No, they're good, and I've been working with them for 4 years. So
wow!
4 years, which started out to work really well, and then kind of went away, and I didn't hear about them, hear them for quite a while, and then they came back again, and they said, "Wow, we're going to actually do this," and I got excited again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's good.
This is David Cormican, is executive producer and co-showrunner, and we're going to have one more showrunner to come and join you.
We got the whole gang here.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank goodness you'll be able to get some more questions answered over here.
I have no answer.
But you're the brainchild of all this, so.
All right. So anyway, go ahead and let me fumble.
Oh, you're fine.
Tell your story.
You're fine.
Anybody else?
So, okay. Well, then what you see this project? I don't know. What are my origins?
Your origins.
My mother and father. So Dwayne and I, we share a manager, Alan Morrell, and he brought the book to us, coming from Roberto Vivo and Lucas Vivo, father and son, and they had the rights for the project, and they've been trying to adapt it for a few years. There's a few misstarts with other writers, and they just weren't able to sort of land on the tape for how do you adapt this big epic show that's coming from one of the minds of the big 3 in Paul, and. When we first, I was beyond excited, and then the second response was sheer terror. Oh my God, how will we do this? And how do we, this is we're stepping into like a big arena, and it's a responsibility that I do not take lightly. And before we accept it wholeheartedly, we wanted to talk to Paul to make sure that we could get his approval or blessing on the story. And not just yours, but we also talked a lot about Arthur and what he would, would this earn his approval? And when you said yes, that was like, okay, I think we're on to something. And then, it was a wonderful journey from there to sort of continue developing.
Stop talking. Dwayne Hill, co-showrunner with David, and another executive producer.
Yes.
You got the 3 PowerPoints right there.
Here we are.
David, how did you adapt your storytelling style from Shadowhunters to Venus Prime?
Well, I'm not one of the writers on Shadowhunters, so I was
Oh,
just a producer on it.
I'm so sorry.
Totally fine.
He wanted to.
I definitely.
He wasn't able to adapt to it. He made a lot of great choices. I am kidding. It goes viral.
It's okay.
I can go better.
You're doing great. You're doing great. So in terms of, I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, that's
from
true.
That
Yeah,
show to this, but in terms of adapting our styles, I would say that Dwayne and I, we like to work with a room and just sort of bounce a lot of. We're very collaborative, and it's always best idea wins. And so this for us was again starting with the blessing of Paul, and then diving into the science to make sure we get it right because we're not scientists.
Oh, sure. Paul's been great, by the way. Did I say that right?
You better.
I made eye contact. He goes. We call them gray moods. Just
Well, these
shuts
guys,
down.
you know, I'm a science writer, and this
Still.
guy is, as well
Great
as
press.
a novelist.
Yeah, that was actually one of the wild things. Reading all the books, you realize how much technology Paul and Arthur predicted that is now in use, like tablets, billboards as advertising. You know, there's so much more that's in there, and so that was one of our conundrums. It's like, how do we come up with new technology for 30, 40 years from now? Where will we be? Sure. And I feel like we've done some pretty cool little.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, we both congratulated ourselves. We have these calls. We're like, yeah, I thought it was great.
When it excites ourselves, you're like, oh, that's really cool. You know? How do you get?
What wasn't it the guy?
He came up with most of them.
Yeah, it's an aside, but the guy was, Rob Schneider was talking about working with Steven Seagal, and it took like a half an hour to leave his trailer. And he's like, why did it take so long to leave your trailer? He goes, I just read the greatest script I've ever read in my life. And he goes, oh, who wrote it? He goes,
Oh my goodness.
These guys can actually make things, by the way, that Arthur didn't do, but would have done had he been there to do it himself. In other words, you've done things that have become realistic.
yeah, and that's great having you two. You've been so great to work with. Again, don't hit me. But you know, when you call Paul and you say, "This is what we'd like to do. What do you think of this?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to discuss this." And it's really nice to have this great reference. You know, like usually you don't get that. You know, and so you've been a fantastic resource.
Well,
Great
he's
friend to
great.
work with,
Yeah.
and obviously great sense of humor.
So, aside from the technology, how closely are you guys adapting the books, or are you kind of shifting? We have Dune or we have Foundation, where it's like two completely different approaches to
It's an homage to the story. It veers pretty wildly from the. No, we actually try to stay pretty close. It's a great story. It's a vulnerable young lady. She was held in a captive, by a corporation run by a kind of a crazy, eccentric billionaire. See if you can step into that world. See if you can find it for me. There you go. We've blocked. And she escapes, and she's marginalized, and she's vulnerable. Yet she's strong, and she learns how strong she is on the journey, and we grow with her, and it's just so beautiful. And Paul told the story so well, and she's on a quest to find her parents, but she's also solving a crime, and the whole thing's a mystery and science fiction. And there's dark twists, like John was saying. I see bits of Fargo in this, and James Bond, Jane Bond, and she does these. She pulls a rabbit out of a hat at the last second. She kind of finds her inner strength, which I think we all hope we can do. Yeah. So I hope everybody who watches it and feels a little bit, I want to say it is marginalized. Everybody here is so unique, right? There's a saying. I tend to take over conversations.
That's not the same.
That's the same.
There's a saying amongst people that work with me. Wayne tends to take over the conversation. When crab fishermen go fishing, they never put a lid on the crab bucket because crabs never leave the bucket. Because the other crabs police them. They try to get out themselves and they pull them all back in and they never leave. And 1 in a million crabs leaves the bucket. And it's a very special crab because it got out. And when you go to San Diego Comic-Con, it feels like this place is full of crabs that got out of the bucket. That escaped judgment.
Ah.
It's a beautiful picture.
And questioning and common sense. Like, why are you dressing like a pencil? Because an anime, what? And then he gets there and it's like, best pencil.
Yeah.
Right? And this didn't exist when I was growing up. So it's so beautiful. And that's why this story, I think, is really timely.
Are you both quite steeped in sci-fi before this? Are you both, is it a nerdy passion of yours?
I personally wasn't. I do love it. I mean, I read when I was growing up. I was really into sci-fi, but then I got into YA.
Oh.
I'm kidding. No, I didn't. if it's a moody vampire, where do I sign? Oh, he just wants love.
I'm probably one of those rare breeds that was equally a fan of Star Trek and Star Wars. Yeah, I feel like I'm more of a sci-fi fan.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But the story is more than science fiction to me. Again, as I said, and it's also a crime story. It's also a mystery. It's, and the science fiction isn't super heightened. It's not like, the hovercloud will be here. Here he is. He's late. Let me check my space watch.
You gotta have a space watch now.
Gotta have a space watch now. Where's my space watch? Oh, it's flying. It's flying. Get the space watch net. Oh, good. It's trapped in the fan.
Dwayne, how did your diverse background, including Mean Girls, influence your work with Venus?
Yes, those Mean Girls. The ladies over there, the crew over there. We all have pictures.
I'm just really surprised.
I know. I've aged horribly. It's fine.
No.
It's fine.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just like, this is totally different in a way.
I think when I decided to, I feel like anybody who wants to be creative should take this to heart. Like, you think you want to be an actor, but then I would say, like, audition for theater. See if you like actors. Actors are a little bit, like one of my best friends is a very successful actress. I'm not going to say her name, but whenever she gets a new boyfriend, I'm like, you have a Stradivarius in your life, not a fiddle, not a violin. Does not do well in humidity. May be a little squeaky at times. Like this is people that have incredible access to their emotions like that, like an actress or an actor, when they can have 100 people, and they've got to cry on cue, and they're on a wire, and they're dodging, doing fight scenes or whatever. That's a certain personality type that can be very, but. There's so many ways to be creative in this industry. You can be a writer, you can be an art director. There's so many ways. So I was just like, maybe I won't. Like I tried on camera and I was okay. It wasn't great. Whenever you're on a movie, you're like, well, that guy's better than me. He's way better. Like clearly. Ugh. Yes, I've memorized it. I'll say it. Cut around me. So I just like to be anything. I like to stay in the business and be creative, and so like I started writing.
Yeah.
It's the longest answer in the world.
Well, I mean, this is sci-fi, so you're trying to challenge yourself in a way.
Definitely, and also I think there's also something good about approaching it from a non-science fiction world, because we have a literal science writer as a frame of reference who can say, this feels very young adult. And so I think we actually dip our toes into both ponds, where it's a good drama with lots of heart, and it's the future, and it's dystopian, but it's hopeful. The overall message is hopeful, that she can do it, we can do it, and we want to root for her and love her and care for her and shelter her, which I hope you will all do with me.
Is she young? Are you looking to cast a young person in this?
Yeah, like mid-20s, I would say. 20 to
29 technically on the script.
Yeah.
Oh, 29 in the script.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but up or down, plus or minus.
Yeah. We are.
Well, yeah. So I guess this is like the big reveal.
I say Michael already kind of mentioned it.
So we're launching today at 5:45 p.m. Our website goes live. We're doing an international talent search for our Sparta. We
Wow.
want to find someone.
So
That's cool.
And it could be somebody who attended this year. Yeah.
So I know like the covers usually have like the blonde.
No, so this is what's interesting. The original covers are something that we actually talked early on.
The first thing I said, I was like, our lead seems a little top heavy. Well, it just feels like it's a very sexist.
Let me tell you this.
Yeah. No, but I'm very curious because
It was like that all the time.
Yeah, we wanted to make it more.
That was part of our we wanted to address the artwork because it's definitely not 2024, and so we worked with the publishers to redesign.
You're
We
absolutely
redesigned
right.
all the
Yeah.
covers, and they're actually.
So let me tell you this though. When it started out, she was already a little bit buxom in a spacesuit, which was a little odd to begin with, because you wouldn't look that way if you were in a spacesuit. Then the next time, she looked even younger. and bigger, and then she kept getting younger and bigger and younger and bigger. And by the time, and in the real story, she's actually goes through a number of years, so she gets to be actually somewhat older when it ends. And by that time, she looks like she's about 12 years old. And I was able to persuade them to actually change that one, but that was the only one that I had a good. So now if you look at that one, there's someone who looks like they're almost 50. Yeah. I guess the artist must have been mad at me at the time.
And there was 3 angry loners who were like, "Aww."
So, at any rate, there was a problem with the first version, which is still out there. A lot of people look at it, but the one that has come through is much better. I mean, amazingly better in terms from my standpoint. Amazingly better, but a very good series that is recent. I would have brought it
We
if
have a
I'd known.
few of the first book that we're going to be giving away, I think at the panel, but also at the signing afterwards. So.
Now, I'm really excited to hear that you guys are opening the cast up to anyone around the world, because when I saw that, I was like, oh, for me, is there going to be any changes? Obviously, because the book was made so long ago. And then now we're here in 2024, and it's supposed to be futuristic. And we don't all look the same.
It's not heightened reality, and I will say the book itself is certainly not sexist or or misogynistic. It's actually a really great message that still holds up today. It is a book we could adapt very easily. We didn't have to change things like this Asian character has got quite the accent. It's nothing like that. So Paul was, he didn't do the covers, but everything else inside was, I think, quite prescient.
Well, there are a lot of different places that are mentioned in the sense. So even one of the major characters is half Chinese and half Irish. So there are a number of people that change considerably. Even in the beginning, although I think now is a good time to do more.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else?
I have 78 more questions.
Sorry. I was just, you talked about Clark helping you and advising you when you were writing. How does it feel now that you are now kind of mentoring them and guiding them on your stuff? Like, that has to feel, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a little easier now. When Arthur and I, there was a new invention that had just come on, and it was called the email. And so that's the way we talked back then in the 80s and early 90s. These guys, I don't have that problem anymore. We've got the email.
We've got the email down. Yeah.
And a few other things too.
We send letters.
Right.
David, how's your quill? Is it still the shop getting sharpened, getting requilled?
Yeah. So, at any rate, things have changed considerably, and I think you guys will probably make some good versions out of that. Do things that I might not have thought of.
Hopefully, narrator. They did not, in fact, make good versions.
How are you approaching? Because I know they told us the first season is going to be 6 episodes, and I'm assuming that's like the first book. Are you going to try and close it up or leave it open? Because obviously you want to tell the whole story.
Well, there are 6 books in total, and we are turning it into 5 seasons. The last 2 we're kind of turning into a hybrid, because
which is good, by the way.
Which is great. And Paul and Arthur take this, like this far as saying, I've read science fiction, but this is like the next level. It's really, really great the way it evolves, and it's liberating to see such creativity. As somebody who's not as creative as that. It's like, I could copy this and get credit for it. Note to self, love
credit
more. So yeah, it's our plan was the first season, the first book, the second season, the second book, and then the 5th season is the 5th and 6th books, which got really wild. So, fingers crossed.
I hope I'm not telling a story out of school here, but the the books were selling so well. You guys didn't plan to go this far into it, so the publishers kept saying, "We need another book. We need another book, and we need it by then." Yeah. So
that happened.
I remember you sharing with
And
us
I-
saying
and
how
I'm
rushed
saying,
you
you know,
felt on the last book.
Yeah, I felt that actually I'd gone one book too long, frankly, because
You can cut this part out, right?
but I had to, I had to do it, and I wish that I had been able to end it in number 5. And the guy, you're surprising me that you're actually going to do that if we work out the way we're supposed to.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a real a plus, I think.
I mean, you don't want to take book 6 and make it into 7 and 8.
Well, that's the other
Arrival?
option.
The Arrival? With Amy Adams?
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve? Those are kind of what things become in the books. Like these giant they think, they say there's like that thing where everything evolves into a crab, right?
Right.
And then there's everything evolves into like a squid. So it's sort of interesting. So anyway.
But that's a long way off.
Spoiler alert.
We'll talk about it in 5
2
years.
seasons ago.
5 years later. We're all just heads in a jar.
I love the 5th season. Somebody replace my water. My hair is dry.
Do y'all plan on doing any outside research? Obviously it's science fiction, but do y'all ever plan on going to a lab or doing any kind of research like that to inspire or help with making the show?
At the David and Venus struggling to breathe.
Why did we? This is a bad idea.
Well, Paul is a science writer, so we literally have him and he actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but all the spacecraft, all of the equipment in the book, he actually did schematics for everything 40 years ago. So, and we love them so much, we're using them exactly as they were. We're not updating them or anything. They're really great designs. And so he's our reference, which is great.
I didn't do that, by the way. There was very good. Not the guy who did the
We discussed this, Paul. I punch him everywhere below the neck. None of the bruises show.
Cut.
Sorry, it was just me being
hilarious.
Twitter is already
This is going to be a very special episode of Elder Reviews.
So Paul, you're mostly doing all the research. Therefore, they're using you as a reference for all the
Oh no,
science.
they're what they're researching is they're looking at the book and seeing how they can make a better movie out of that, and they're surviving from what I've read so far, and they're doing a good job. And all I'm there for is to say, you may want to look at this or that because that can't work, or this, is impossible. But you could do this instead, and so far it's been great. I try not to mess with things that they're doing terrifically well, and every once in a while where I think that might be the kind of mistake that people who are into that will get at us and say, why did you make that stupid mistake? That's all I'm really helping.
And then we negotiate the departures from that. And going, okay, so that's how it actually happened, and here's what we can do, and everyone will mostly believe that, right?
That's really
You still have to have
important.
the emotional journey in there for the character.
Exactly.
Oh man, yes. I mean that is the story.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm asking all these questions. No, it's just really important. No, it's really important that you guys are doing all of that because you that have nerds like me who are actually in tech and are doing science and we're in the labs and then we watch a show that we geek out and we're like, oh, hold up. That's not how that would go.
It's very grounded science fiction.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
I worked for Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory for 16 years, so I have some contacts there if I need to ask questions. So if we can ask questions that I can't answer.
Until an anti-gravity machine went missing one night. Paul,
We're first in
what are
line
you
for
doing up
space
there?
Yeah,
You're fired. He's floating away.
that's what happens with him.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting you all.
Real pleasure.